My first instrument was actually harmonium, and I had like a very proper, serious classical teacher, and he didn't want to teach us any like sort of new or popular music. It was all like, rags, bhajans, that type of thing. Funny because my dad is kind of into music. My mom not so much. My family's not actually a very musical family.
Interesting.
But my dad had a great collection of CDs.
All right, we're inching our way towards Lollapalooza, India 2025. Big weekend. This is Saturday 8th of March, Sunday 9th of March. What a stellar lineup it is this year, both international as well as Indian artists. It's at the Mahalakshmi Racecourse. Tickets are going out very fast. Last few tickets at lollaindia.com. So go get your tickets. Also, if you're a RuPay credit card customer, there's some great pricing for you guys. You could get general admission for as low as 5,999, which the others would pay 9,999 for. And as official radio partners, it's our responsibility to make sure that you guys meet all these exceptional artists who are performing. We've already gotten you Nothing But Thieves, Sahil Vasudeva, Raga Miatal, and now it's time for Sid Vashi. Sid Vashi, for those of you who are fans of his music, is on day 1, which is 8th of March. This is on the main stage, and that's the day that Shawn Mendes headlines. So earlier on in the afternoon, Sid is going to take center stage for his performance. And if you're not familiar with his music, we're hoping to get you familiar to the course of this interview so that you actually make it to the Mahalakshmi Racecourse on the 8th to catch him. Great to see you, buddy, and many congratulations on being signed up for Lolla this year.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to start at your instrument of choice. I've seen these wonderful videos of you playing your saxophone. And was that the first instrument you ever reached out for, or was it something that you discovered over the course of the years when you decided you want to be a musician?
My first instrument was actually harmonium, and I had like a very proper, serious classical teacher, and he didn't want to teach us any like sort of new or popular music. It was all like, rags, bhajans, that type of thing. So obviously I was like 9 years old. It didn't really, hold me as much. And then the next year in school, we got to try a bunch of instruments, and I really liked the saxophone. I was really drawn to it, and I guess I've been playing ever since.
Yeah, and then most saxophone players are guys who find their teeth or sink their teeth into jazz bands.
Yeah.
Was that a natural progression for you right
Absolutely,
in the beginning?
Yeah. I was really lucky where I grew up. There was a very strong jazz band, like in the middle school.
Detroit, is
in
that where you grew
Detroit
up?
area, yeah.
That's the home of jazz, isn't it?
Yeah. Lots of jazz, great music history generally.
And I've never been, but I believe lots of jazz clubs too, all over. Yeah.
Not as much as there used to be. The city's gone through a bit of a hard time, but there's still a very alive scene there. And I have actually a few friends who went to school with who are now pretty active in that scene still, so it's really nice to see. But yeah, I was drawn to jazz very early. That was sort of my main sort of foundation. I guess the Western music and the Indian classical were both kind of early in my musical development, and then I started coming into more and more sort of styles of music. I also played quite a bit of classical music as well, like Western classical.
And were you born in the U.S., or did your dad move there when you were really young?
No, it was a bit of a reverse situation. So I was born in the U.S., and then we moved to India when I was 16.
Wow.
And so then I came here, and I lived in India for a few years, and then went back and forth for a while, then ended up staying here for about 3 or 4 years when I was doing the music.
But your first 15 years were in the U.S.,
yeah, in the US,
Detroit.
Yeah.
And honestly, those are the years when you're kind of discovering music listening. And more often than not, it's what's playing in the house that determines, what we're listening to.
Yeah, definitely.
Was classical music part of that repertoire, or was your dad playing other kinds of stuff, or your mom playing other kinds of stuff?
Oh, it's so funny because my dad is kind of into music. My mom not so much. My family's not actually a very musical family.
Interesting.
But my dad had a great collection of CDs, and they were really diverse. I think he just kept buying CDs, whatever it was. So everything from more R&B, like Boyz II Men stuff, to like old classic rock. I think his favorite was classic rock, so a lot of like Pink Floyd and Zeppelin and that type of stuff. And then jazz, so like Miles Davis, John Coltrane. And then I started discovering other things that I like responded to. I really liked Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and the classical stuff was sort of more through school and like the symphony bands and stuff that I was playing in.
And in that aspect, when you were growing up in the U.S. as an Indian boy, did you have to stay true to Indian tradition? Let me explain. Irrespective of what musical instrument you pick up or what sport you play, in India the thing is get your studies done.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you that question, and we will come to that, is because Sid is actually a doctor and an MBBS. So was
MD.
that sorry, an MD? MD?
Yeah, I am an MD.
MD, yeah, an MD. So my logical question is, were you told go ahead and be a musician, or was it like you've got to keep studying through it all?
It's funny because I was always quite obsessed with music. Didn't really interfere with my studies when I was younger, and even growing up, it was always just something I did to, like, what do you do with your free time, you know? It was something that I enjoyed. And then when I came back after my undergrad in university, I was sort of figuring out what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to go to medical school, but I had to take some exams, I had to do some stuff. So I came here to study for those exams. And then in that time, I got these music opportunities. And then my parents were like, oh, is he going to be a musician? Like, he had his plan and everything. And they weren't like super pressuring me into like going into anything specifically, but they were, you know, a bit concerned because it's a hard life being a musician. And then, you know, I was able to make some money and actually do stuff. And, you know, I was doing jingles, they were on the TV. And so then they felt a bit settled. So then when I was like, okay, no, I'm done, I'm going to go to medical school, they were like, why do you want to go, like, stay in India? And so they were a bit, I guess, happy, but also they've never been too concerned, I don't think. I don't know.
And in India, there have been stints in Gurgaon as well as in Bombay, isn't it? I mean, those are the two cities you lived in.
Mainly, yeah. We were in Pune briefly as well.
That's a nice city. It's
it
quite nice.
Yeah.
So, but the music recording happened largely in Gurgaon and Bombay. Or would you say you did
mainly Bombay? But I've been recording since I was studying in Boston. I've been recording music actually since I was 14. So I've been doing it for ages now, I guess. And I've always just kind of recorded wherever I could. You know, if you have a laptop and a mic and you just...
You know, it's just that, and you have to go to any streaming site and just type Sid Vashi, SID space VASHI, and you realize it's such an interesting potpourri of sounds, even though, like he says, his instrument of choice now is the saxophone. There are so many different sounds in there, you know, stuff that you obviously program in there. Are you a multi-instrumentalist in that aspect? Do you play a lot of those instruments?
Yeah.
Or do you get session players to come in and record?
A bit of both. I mean, I'm pretty comfortable on guitar, piano, saxophone. I mean, the key instruments are fine. But there's obviously people who are a lot better than me, you know? So I do tend to get session musicians in when there's things that I know that they can do that I can't. But I would say a majority of the sounds you hear are things that I've either made or in some cases like sampled.
All right, we're excited. What's the composition of your band going to be at Lolla India? I mean, it's obvious that you're going to bring a motley crew of musicians, the kind of music that you put out. So tell me, man, I mean, it's you on sax, and is there going to be a bass player, a lead guitar player? I don't know.
So we've got 7 people, and they're all great musicians. A lot of them are also producers and composers, which I think, you know, gives another level of musicianship. But I've got a violin player. This Ajay Jayanti is also a composer.
Fantastic.
He's amazing. I've got Amandeep Singh, who's a guitar player. He's amazing. I think he plays with Diljit. I've got Rohan Rajadaksha and Viraj. They're from
another very, very well-known name in the Indian circuit, Rohan Rajadaksha.
Oh, fantastic. Him and then Viraj as well. Both of them are composers. They did, you know, the stuff with the Gully Boy soundtrack and all that. And then I've got, who else? It's a big band. I've got Ankit Dayal, who's also doing vocals and percussions. And I've got Reese. I've got a second saxophone player. So it's going to be a nice big band.
I mean, it makes me sound like a dinosaur, but Reese's mom and myself, we're great friends.
Right.
Merlin's amazing too. I mean, you must know her. She's a keyboard player, singer.
I haven't met her, no, unfortunately.
Oh, she's lovely.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely bowled over because Merlin called and she said, you know, Reese is is acting in a play, and I went and saw him do this thing. He's actually playing a young saxophone player in that particular play, so you should ask him about that. So he's made his debut on the stage too. So wow, what an interesting bunch of musicians.
It's a really great.
And how do two saxophones work? I mean, do you just jam, or is it going to be pre-rehearsed? I don't know.
There's aspects of both. So I like to have some parts where we can improvise, and from that jazz tradition, and then there's also a lot more now written parts that are on multiple saxophones. So it's nice to have. I did the last few shows with just one saxophone, and then some of this other saxophone parts in the tracks. But I thought, if I can have more instruments, why not? So, and Reese is such a great player, so we've. It's going to be a combination of both, really. And
are all these musicians by now familiar with your music and your style? Because at the end of the day, you're going to build a set list for those 40-45 minutes, and these guys have, no matter how good they are at what they do, which they are, they're going to have to acclimatize to your music. Yeah,
I'm very. I like to prepare. So I've put together a lot. They've been aware of the set. We actually had a rehearsal when I was here last in January, just to listen to all the songs and to get the parts together. And now our rehearsals start from tomorrow. But half the band already knows most of the songs quite well, and the other half, they're very good. And we've already discussed the parts, and they've been listening to the songs. So I think should be in good shape, hopefully.
Okay, now I'm just going to go through some of your music, which I've really enjoyed. Sid tells me he's been working 7 years on an album. That's a long time. But having said that, there's still lots and lots of his music that's out for you guys to sample. In 2017 came an album called Azuma Kazuma, and it's very Japanese. Were you watching anime at the time?
I was watching one particular. I'm not super into anime, to be honest, but I was watching this one particular anime called Yakitate Japan, and it's about bread making, but it's very like a deep meditation on bread, and I think can be extrapolated to like art in general. And there's a young boy who's kind of this prodigy bread maker, whose name is Azuma Kazuma, and it's partly the inspiration, and it's a space opera, so it's got a story, and in that the name Azuma Kazuma kind of comes up in different contexts.
And we have an anime show let me explain. This is music that's used in anime. So we have this guy called Karthik who's just crazy about anime as a form, watches a lot of it, consumes so much anime content. And he comes and does this show called Anime Junction, where he will pull out songs from very prominent anime soundtracks.
Yeah, right.
Most of them are rock, man. They're like hard rock.
There's a lot of rock. Yeah. The ones that jump out to me are Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, which one is like a very great jazz soundtrack, and it's all set in space. And then this other one, it's like ancient Japan, and it's all like Japanese hip-hop. But there's some great anime music out there. The Japanese have a very particular way of approaching music. I think it's very diverse, and I think that also inspires my music in a way. You had a interesting single release called Bodhi RMX last year, which is quite an earworm. I've been listening to it since last night. Oh, really?
I really enjoy it. So
I'm so glad.
Tell me about it.
So that's my friend Lapgan. We worked together on the Heems album as well. He's a great producer from Chicago. He reached out to me to do a remix for the release of his album, and so I sort of challenged myself to do one in like 3 or 4 hours. And so that was the challenge, and I happy with the way it came out. It was fun sample to work with. He just sent over the samples and things like that, and I just did whatever felt natural.
And I discovered this Sri Lankan Tamil singer through your music.
Navz.
She's so
incredible.
Good. She's incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to your music, and I just set an Arbit playlist with your name on it, and it just kept drawing your music. And I was saying, what is this voice? And there are about 3 tracks or more that you guys have worked together on.
No, just one. Just one. Yeah. I'd like to do more.
And then I went on to her page, and it's just incredible. I mean, the voice, and it's almost as though there's a natural reverb echoes from the hills.
Yeah. I mean, she's got a great singing voice. Her rapping is incredible. Like, she really does both of those incredibly well.
What's the track?
It's called Flowers.
Yeah.
It's a nice one. One of my favorite from that album.
So tell me how that collab happened.
So it happened actually through Heems. So Heems is a rapper from the States. He was in a group called Das Racist, and then a group called Sweatshop Boys with Riz Ahmed. Sweatshop Boys.
I have a lot of love for Riz. He's amazing.
Yeah. And so he's been, making music for ages. And I was a fan of his in college, and through some mutual friends, we came into contact, and we had met like maybe 7-8 years ago. Had chatted a bit about making music, but not really. And we had both been sort of in and out of making music for a while. Then a few years ago, I was in New York. We caught up, and I think the timing was just right. We were both in the mood to make music and get back into things. And so we started with a couple tracks. Those couple tracks turned into an album, turned into actually 2 albums. We probably have another one coming out early this year. And then it just kind of happened naturally. We had a lot of commonalities, growing up in America and liking similar musics and things. So,
and you use another artist called Johnny Ghanta.
Yeah.
His voice quite a lot.
I've used it in a couple tracks, mainly in this one called Ghosts Don't Follow Me. So he did the artwork for my first album, for Azuma Kazuma. And
so he's not really a vocalist.
No, he's a visual artist from. He lives in Bangalore now. He's very talented. Does a lot of like digital and collage type art. Very otherworldly, cool stuff. And
what did you use him for in terms of art?
The album art
for Azuma.
For Azuma Kazuma.
Okay.
And I was also I set up a studio in his apartment when he was living.
This one,
that
very
one.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I was working on a track, and we were listening to a lot of Fela Kuti. And we were really inspired by that, so I made this track, and then he was just like, jamming out to it, making these noises. I was like, just record that.
What's Fela Kuti?
Fela Kuti is a Afrobeat legend. Like, he invented Afrobeat in the 60s, 70s. Very dance, like heavy kind of danceable African music with a lot of like jazz kind of influence in it as well.
I've been listening to this Afrobeats artist out of Ghana called Kidi.
Oh yeah,
he's quite interesting.
I haven't heard him. No, I'll have to check it out. Afrobeats is now an interesting term because I think the modern Afrobeat versus like the old Afrobeat are very different styles of music. Like the new one is more like, I think it's uses African rhythms, but it also draws a lot more from like R&B and hip hop. Whereas like the older Afrobeat, I think, is more jazz based. I like both.
So you guys were just sitting and you played him that, and and that's how it happened.
I think a lot of times it's the spontaneous things that come and make interesting sounds. So it's like when you're in a moment when people are really feeling and the music and what it's supposed to make you feel and capturing into that energy. It's when you can capture that. It's actually why I always carry a mic around with me. I always have a field recorder just in case something interesting comes up.
That's wonderful. My favorite track, of course, and I'm sure lots would echo my sentiment, is Darling. I really love the track. The couple of versions of it.
Yeah.
But I like the original one that came out in 2017. It's been a while now. It is a romantic song. I mean, that's what it is. And did you intend it to be that way?
I did actually. So actually, I was working on a student film with some of my friends who were studying in Srishti. Excuse me. And we were making it was a short film based on Faust. The old story where a man tries to sell his soul to the devil. And there was sort of a love interest in that, and there was a love sort of scene, and I was writing a song for that, and it ended up being Darling, but then that movie never ended up really happening, and so I had this track, and I kept coming back to it because there's something about it. It was, something that I was quite proud of, so I kept reiterating it and making different versions until, the version that you've come to hear. But it was always, meant to be a romantic song, and I'm glad it translates, I guess.
So, a lot of musicians like you, multi-instrumentalists whose music is such an exciting potpourri of various stuff, like the solitary confinement of a studio.
Yeah.
But then I've seen you on stage in sessions, and you're like you take to it very comfortably. which do you enjoy more is my question. Are you more, I want to be in the studio, cocoon myself and keep recording? Or I want to get on stage and feel the vibe?
Definitely the former. I love the studio. I could be in the studio my whole life probably and be happy. But I've been performing live forever, since I was probably 11, 12. And so it's something I really enjoy. It's a different thing entirely, like arrangements and, just translating, especially now when so much of music is made on the computer, translating it live and make it, still have that same kind of effect is a interesting challenge. But there's something about playing music with, your friends and the people you like. There's some kind of, something really special there that I love and I'd never want to stop doing. But yeah, my happy place is the studio.
Are you going to keep that new album you're working on over the last 7 years an absolute secret, or are you going to give a sneak peek at Lolla? Saying, these are a couple of songs I'm going to do from the new album.
So the main reason why I wanted to play these shows this year was to try out the new songs.
Oh, great.
So it's going to be mainly the new songs. I'm going to be playing a few from the first album, but a majority, I would say about 70%, is going to be all new music.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what have you kept the set list as? Is it going to be... like, for example, Raghav Miatal, who's another artist who's performing, said, I'm only going to keep it up-tempo. No ballads for that particular afternoon. But, it depends on each artist.
Yeah.
Are you keeping the tempo in a particular manner, or are you saying, look here, I don't care. As long as it's representative of my music. Yeah,
my music, I think, especially the new stuff, there is a lot of up-tempo types of things. I think it's very sad music with a very happy dancey beat, a lot of it. So I think I'm gonna keep it mainly stuff that you can move to, but not too crazy, because it's still daytime. And so there will be a few tracks that are mainly for listening, and then the rest, I would say a good 70-30 split.
I wonder if you've been to any of the Lollas around the world. Have you been to Chicago?
No, I've been wanting to, but no, I never ended up.
And the last two editions that happened here with Imagine Dragon
I wasn't
and
here.
Sting? No, you weren't there?
No. Would have loved to see Sting. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, man. I went and hung with him at the Taj to do an interview, and it was really life-altering.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's just amazing.
He's so talented.
Yeah.
He's just so talented.
And, it was a 2-hour plus set, and he's almost 70, man. It's just unbelievable.
Oh, man. I watched some videos, and he plays bass so well and sings, and his voice is still, good as ever. He's really incredible.
So tell me, who you looking forward to catching amongst the international acts? Are you a Green Day fan?
Huge Green Day fan.
A lot of us when we were in high school wanted to be Billy Joe.
Yeah. Oh, man. I grew up with that music, It's be wild to see Green Day. I never got a chance to see them. It's crazy
that they're still together and they're doing what they do.
Yeah, and they're so good. They've been doing it for so long. They're a 3-piece, really tight, great band. I'm looking forward to Big Boy. So I've been a huge Outkast fan for ages.
Unfortunately, Big Boy's pulled out, so...
no!
It's a sad bit. But then that's life. So
I love Big Boy, man. And Glass Animals, I really enjoyed their first album a lot. So... I'm looking forward to seeing them. And
of course, on day one, the day that you're on, also has Shawn Mendes. Day 2 as Louis Tomlinson. Is that too poppy for you?
To be honest,
Nothing But Thieves is actually an interesting band. They're from the eastern part of England, and they're mainstream rock. I quite like their sound. You should go check them out.
I would love to. Yeah. I need to get more. I think more and more festival lineups come out, and I know less and less artists, but I've just had less time to explore music.
And amongst the Indians, have you been keeping a keen eye on what Hanuman Kind has achieved internationally?
Yeah, I saw. I really love that video, the Big Dogs one. And I'm looking forward to Dunji.
Yeah.
Dunji's really cool. I really liked his Ruab album. I think he's really talented.
There's also Niladri Kumar, who's actually a sitar player, but he modifies the sitar. And it's halfway between a sitar and a guitar, and he calls it the Zitar.
Oh, nice.
So he should be really interesting. So, yeah, it's a great lineup, a couple of great days. But you did play at Magnetic Fields last year.
Yeah.
That must have been one hell of experience.
Oh, it was great. It's my 4th time playing that festival.
Wow.
So it was nice because it's the 10-year anniversary, a lot of history. I've been playing since the early editions. It's nice to see it, how it's grown. And my first show in about 6 years, so it was nice to get back into things with the band and everything. It was really nice. Good I guess, reintroduction back into playing music.
But why a hiatus of 6 years? Was it because of the medicine?
Yeah, I went back. Well, I went to Australia, and I came back to play magnetic fields in 2018. And then
you were studying in Australia?
When I was studying there in 2019. Then lockdown happened, and I couldn't leave Australia. And then I just got out of it. I was too busy. I wasn't making as much music. And I was just sort of focusing on my career. My other career, I guess.
You still live in Australia?
Yeah.
And the idea is to do a major in psychiatry. That's what you said off.
Yeah, I'm planning to specialize. So I've been working. I've been working in psychiatry for the last couple of years, and I guess I'm putting in the work to become a psychiatrist at some point. But for now, I'm just, I guess, a doctor working in psychiatry. Yeah.
And what is it that fascinates you about psychiatry?
I'm interested in people, and I think the more you do psychiatry, the more you sort of understand different aspects of the human experience. There's just so many things about it that are interesting. People's stories, the psychopathology, the biological versus the nature versus nurture type of thing. It's never boring.
And do you live in Melbourne? Do you live in Sydney?
Melbourne,
Melbourne,
yeah.
And have you found a like-minded bunch of musicians to hang out with, play?
Yeah, a few. I did a couple things. So I played. I didn't play much in Australia, to be honest, but I've know a few musicians out there that I'm kind of in touch with. A good friend of mine, Jitom, who comes here every now and then. He's played a couple shows. I played with him in his band at the Opera House a couple of years ago, the Sydney Opera House. That was really nice. But aside from that, not much out there. I like to keep things separate. So when I'm in Australia, I'm, my normal doctor self. And when I'm here, I focus on the music.
A couple of other songs that I really liked. I actually really like Stay Low.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's an old one.
Yeah, it's a really old one, but I love it. So what was it about? What were you thinking when you created it?
What was I thinking at that time? I was really sort of just getting into, I guess, a style of music that I was never really dived deep into until I moved to India was dance music. And so that was around the time where I was starting to become more and more fascinated with dance music, but not necessarily like your techno or your EDM, but just, music that you can move to, a lot of disco stuff. And I was listening to a lot of like Bollywood disco as well. So trying to combine aspects of like, I guess, the electronic modern stuff and also the Bollywood disco to make something fun that you can, move to.
That's interesting. So pick now 5 songs for me that people should listen as Sid Vashi essential listening.
Yeah, I would say it's hard to pick representative songs because I like to explore a lot of different styles, but I guess the popular ones are Darling.
I like Birds too.
YY. Yeah.
YY, yeah.
Birds is one of my favorites. Ghost Don't Follow Me and Transmission, I think, are 2 ones that I like quite a bit. And from the Heems album, I really like Flowers, and Monto's also one that's really special for me.
Was it about Monto, the writer?
It's actually about partition. So Heems is Punjabi, and there's long
because
history.
Saadat Hasan Manto was a writer,
right?
Who after partition had to move from Bombay to I think Lahore or Karachi.
Yeah.
And they banned his writing because they thought he was too risque.
Yeah.
And he died a very pained man.
And that's why Heems has that line, sometimes I feel like Monto. It's sort of an allusion to that, but it's overall, I guess, it's about the impact that partition has had, not only on the people who experienced it, but also, the generations that come after it. So it's a really, I guess, personal song from his perspective, and the beat, as well as I got to work with Vijay Iyer, who's a jazz musician I admired for a very long time. So that was quite a special one.
Lovely. Guys, tickets are live now at lollaindia.com. Please go get them. They're going out very, very fast. If you're a RuPay credit card customer, you get some really special rates. Sid Vashi performs day 1, 8th of March at the Mahalakshmi Racecourse. And of course, this is the day that ends with the Glass Animals and Shawn Mendes. And the very next day, it all ends with Nothing But Thieves, Louis Tomlinson, Green Day. Lots of phenomenal Indian acts. And also keep your ears out for 94.3 Radio 1, because we're the official radio partners. Lots of music will keep coming at you. Thank you for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
.3 Radio 1.